Hello everyone. Today I'm here to talk all about the things that I've watched recently. So, I talk a lot about books, but I also watch things too. So I thought, hey, I can do a recently read and I can also do a recently watched. This will probably become a series on my channel because I've said time and time again, I apologize, I have a brand new baby at home. So with that, I have to rock her a lot. I have to feed her a lot, Sometimes I read while doing those things. A lot of times I'm watching something. So that's what we're here to do today. I've watched a lot of things. Like I usually never watch this much stuff because, I have my oldest kid and I'm usually doing stuff while he's at school or therapies and things like that. But I have another kid now. So it's like, I'm just going to watch some things. Anyway, I have a lot of things to talk about. Where's my list? There it is. So I'm going to talk about shows first, then I'm going to talk about movies, and let's get into it. So to kick this whole thing off, of course, we have to talk about You Season 3. If you don't know, You is a show that it's based on a book. I read the book years ago, like probably around when the show first started coming out. I enjoyed the book. It's one of my favorite thrillers of all time. I highly recommend listening to it. It's a perfect experience, creepy and stuff like that. If you don't know what You is about, we follow a character named Joe who works at a bookstore, and he is a horrible person. He falls in love with this girl named Beck, and he stalks her and he kills and things like that. So I don't want to spoil the third season too much for you because I feel like you have to definitely watch the first two seasons, but the third season was pretty good. I will still say I really enjoy the first season. It's my favorite because that is my favorite series in the whole, that's my favorite book in the whole series. I despise the sequel to that book, Hidden Bodies, and I haven't even attempted to read the third book in the series, You Love Me, I think. I just don't even think I'm going to bother with it because I just was like, ugh, whatever. So the third season was pretty good. They obviously, since the second season, have taken different twists and turns because of the books, and I'm not mad at them for that at all because I'm glad they did that. But I would say that Joe is a very interesting character. In the first book, I said time and time again, I've done a whole video on the book and the show. If you want to check it out, I'll leave right here. Joe is a character that you find yourself rooting for, and then you're like, wait, why am I rooting for him? Because all the other characters around him are awful. And when the third season comes to You, you get a lot of love's perspective and things like that. And it's just, it's interesting, I'll say that. It's also interesting the fact that Joe's trying to be better and trying to humanize himself more, but yet he still goes back to his horrible ways, and you feel for him. And then I'm like constantly like, no, you're a horrible person. Like, I need to remind myself of that frequently because no matter how hard he tries, he will fall back on his tendencies of being a killer and a horrible person. And I love the fact that the actor Penn Badgley that plays Joe will oftentimes he'll read tweets and Instagrams of like, Joe can stalk me, and he's like, no, Joe's a horrible person, you need to get that through your head. And I'm like, thank you for saying, I'm playing a horrible character, and I realize that. But I mean, it was a good, strong season. I'm definitely continuing with the series. It's addicting. I finished it within 2 days. So I think I would give it a 4 out of 5. I think I would give the first season a 5 out of 5. And then the second season, maybe like a 3.5. I didn't love the second season as much. And then I did really enjoy this season because it just got bananas. Like, where Joe's very calculated and methodical about things, Love's like, whatevs, let's do this. So it was interesting in that regard. So I gave it a 4 out of 5, solid. Next up, I decided to rewatch the entirety of Stranger Things. I'm sure you guys know about this. It was one of Netflix's first kind of big series to come out. And, since the Netflix has had countless series that have just gone viral, I think right now the biggest one is Squid Game, which I have yet to watch. I don't know if I will. But I decided, it was like the beginning of October. I'm like, it's the perfect time to rewatch it. I haven't rewatched it in years, and I know the fourth season is going to come out eventually. Like, at this point, like, the kids are going to be 20. It's a show that I love, but I hope it's going to be done soon because I hate when shows like just stretch on forever and then the plot line just becomes just convoluted and just weird and doesn't make much sense, and you can tell they're making the show for the money. Looking at you, Grey's Anatomy. I don't watch that anymore. I gave that up like years and years ago for that particular reason. But I hope they end it soon for that regard. Anyway, I watched the first 3 seasons. It's one of my favorite shows because it's just a solid show. Hands down, still my favorite season's the first season. It's got that perfect kind of like spooky vibe, and it's, set in the 80s where it's kind of, homage to Stephen King, Steven Spielberg. It's just really awesome. If you don't know Stranger Things, it's set in 80s. It's set in the 80s in Hawkins, Indiana. It's a very small town, and you follow this group of kids that love playing Dungeons and Dragons, which is still a thing. One of my best friends plays it with her husband a lot, and I think that's awesome. But basically, one of the kids goes missing, and nobody knows where he's at. And they start to feel like there's some paranormal things that are happening in regards to him missing, and that's kind of where you go from there. It is creepy, it is character driven, it is like spooky, the cinematography is amazing, the soundtrack's amazing, everything about it's amazing. I love Stranger Things. So in order of ranking of the first 3 seasons, I would definitely say my favorite is still the first season. I don't think anything's going to come close to that, because even though I was born in the 80s, I didn't grow up in the 80s, but it's still very nostalgic for me, because I grew up in a time before, you know, cell phones were a thing, landlines were still a thing, computers weren't a thing till I was like a teenager, late teenager. So it was nostalgic for me in the matter of riding your bikes everywhere, going to your friend's house, riding the bike, be home before the light comes off, you know? So I just love the first season. So the first season, hands down, 5 out of 5. The second season's pretty good. I would rank that probably I would say my favorite's the first season, then the second favorite is the third season, because while the first season is very 80s nostalgic, yes, the third season really pumps on the 80s nostalgia. In fact, they go to more pop culture-y, where it's very much the fashion of the 80s, the mall was big in the 80s, things like that. So they really lean heavily towards that, which I really enjoyed a ton. So rankings would be first season, third season, then second season. The fourth season is now officially, we figured it out, it's coming out summer of 2022. I don't know, I think it's gonna be set during spring break, but we'll see. But I have high hopes for the fourth season, I'm not gonna lie. I would like to see either the show end the fourth or the fifth season and be done, because I don't want it to drag on and it become not good anymore. Do you get what I'm saying? But I would love to know your rankings of the seasons, which one's your favorite, your least favorite. I mean, it's a solid show. I really enjoy it. I just don't know how much more left it's got, if that makes sense. So yeah. Moving on to probably my favorite thing I've watched during this whole thing is Maid. It's a show I wasn't going to watch because it was sad. I could tell from the very trailer it was sad. It's a show about domestic violence and emotional abuse, and I wasn't going to watch it because of that. I don't like to watch a ton of sad things nor read a ton of sad things because it really affects me. That's just how I am. But I was like, you know what? One day I was like, I'm just going to try the first episode, and then I finished it within 2 days. And of course, by the end of the series, I was sobbing my eyes out like a friggin' baby. But it's a great show. Please, as I've forgotten the character's name, but we follow a character. She is a mom. Her daughter is like 2.5, and she's in a relationship with this guy. I also forget his name. Please forgive me. It's just my brain. And he's not a good guy. He is not physically abusive, but he is emotionally abusive, and he tries to control her. He'll throw things not at her but near her, and eventually one night he throws like a casserole dish that lands next to her head, and glass even ends up in her daughter's head, and she's like, I'm not doing this anymore. So she just leaves in the middle of the night with her daughter with literally no money, and she ends up at a domestic violence shelter. And it kind of goes on from there of her trying to stake life out for her own and for her daughter, to try to be without him, to try to get her own. And it just shows a lot with single moms and with not a lot of money, and you know, it also really sheds a light on emotional abuse, and that's a very real thing. And it was a hard show to watch because I've dealt with some similar things, not myself personally with my relationship, but seeing my mother go through something like that. She was kind of in an emotional abuse relationship with my dad. I'm not going to go further into that because that's just a whole ordeal, but watching it, I saw a lot of similarities. You know, my mom was a single mom. She raised me and my brother a lot alone, and she was amazing. But you know, it was such a good show. It shows the hardships of people that are trying to like do right by their kids, get a job, things like that, and how horrible the government can be with money and stuff like that. You have to have this program and this program and that program, and you have to jump like 50,000 hoops to get the smallest thing. And it was just a great show. It was awesome. I highly recommend you watch it. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I loved it. I don't think there's going to be a season 2, and I'm okay with that. I think it was like a limited series. It definitely left on the promise of hope. I'll say that. I love the way it ended. Like I said, I cried my eyes out. It's well worth it. It's worth learning more about emotional abuse, and if you're in that situation, maybe it'll help you to realize to get out of that, but that's easier said than done because sometimes you can't. And it was just such a great show, and I loved it a ton. The last show I watched was totally random. It was on Disney Plus. I was just perusing, and I love animal shows because I don't know, I just do. And they had this new show called Growing Up Animal, and it had like 5 episodes, and it followed different animals, different mom animals as they gave birth, or as they were pregnant, as they gave birth, and how they kind of raise their babies. And so it followed like one episode was about a bear, which was great. Another one was about a lion. Another one was about a sea lion, a chimpanzee, and an elephant. I think that's all of them. I'm not quite sure, but I freaking love that because it really shows like the bonds of motherhood. And it also is just such a interesting thing to learn about different animals, of how they have to be. Like, for example, the bear, the black bear, I think it was, she was mated with, and she was pregnant, and she was all alone from day one. The male bears just mate and they just peace out. In fact, if they see you again with the baby cubs, they'll try to kill your cubs. They don't care. They're like, those are my kids. I don't give a crap. But don't ever, like, you know the phrase, mama bear is a very true statement. That mom will freaking do things. So it's interesting in the fact of the bear, where the mom does everything alone. Then you have, there was one episode with the wild dog where they're in a pack, and actually the mom that got pregnant was like the queen bee of the pack, and she had to leave for a couple weeks to go give birth in a den because that was just safety things. But her mate was like, I'll hold up the pack, I got you. But when she came back, he was like, I'm gonna help take care of you. I'm gonna help take care of these kids. It was like, it's just really interesting how different animals are in their situation when it comes to parenthood. Like, dogs are a pack, they will help out. Lions, a whole thing, a pride of lions, the women do it all. Let me tell you that. There's one man and he just sits back and he's like the bodyguard, but the other women, they'll go out, they'll go stalk, they'll go hunt, they'll go kill, and then the guy comes in, he's like, I'm gonna eat first because I'm the bodyguard. Men. But anyway, but the moms will all raise the female lions together, just like elephants the same way. Usually there's a lot of female elephants, and they'll raise them all like they're their own. It's just so interesting. I loved it so much, and I hope they continue on with the series because I was enamored by it. If you love animals and you love just seeing different how animals are, highly recommend that show. I've watched several animal shows since, but that's the one that really stuck with me. Moving on quickly because my baby just woke up. Sorry if you hear her crying. Movies. I watched like 4 movies on Netflix just randomly. First one, at 19th, it was a vampire type of movie where these 2 vampire women get a driver, and they just have him drive him all around town to do things, and he learns, hey, I'm riding with some vampires, and it gets kind of dicey from there. I gave it a 3 out of 5. It was okay. It's your typical vampire story. There's not much to it. In fact, honestly, there hasn't been a ton of Netflix movies I really enjoy. I tend to love Netflix shows a ton. They are just well produced. The character development's great, but movies, they kind of fault for me on that one. So this one was just okay. I mean, if you like vampires, maybe check it out. I don't really think you're missing much, honestly. On that note, I watched Army of the Dead. This was like a Zack Snyder thing. It's kind of about zombies, but also with the heist. So basically, zombies have taken over Las Vegas, and they've kind of quarantined it. But this one guy, I think Dave Bautista's in it, yeah. He gets hired to rob this casino's vault in Las Vegas to go into the heart of the zombie land, and he gets a team together, and they kind of do that. Only these zombies aren't like typical zombies. Like, you know, usually zombies are like, oh, don't move around a lot. These zombies are smart. They are fast. They have like a whole pack. Like, they're strong and determined, and they will kill you. Like, they have brains a little bit. And this movie was okay. I enjoyed it a little bit. I love a good heist movie. Like Ocean's 11, freaking love it. But this one was okay. I think the zombie thing I didn't really love. So I gave it a 3 out of 5. I'd say it's a fun movie just to watch, and I don't think you really love it, but it was a fun movie. On that note, we have, what is it called? Army of Thieves, which is the prequel to Army of the Dead, where we follow one character oh crap, I forget his name. But he's the German guy from Army of the Dead. He is the vault guy. He can hack and get into vaults and break into vaults. And so you follow him. Like I said, it's a prequel of how he got into that whole vault breaking business and things like that. So this one is truly a heist movie, which I loved. Like I said, I love a good heist movie. So I give this one a 4 out of 5. I would say I definitely much more prefer the prequel over to the first movie, which is different, which is weird because I think Zack Snyder had nothing to do with the prequel, but I just like a good heist movie. I liked how he got into the whole vault thing, and they were trying to find these 4 different vaults, and it was just really interesting to me. So I really, really enjoyed it. And the last movie I watched was totally random. It's called Carrie Pilby. It's a very like kind of independent movie. It's all about this character named Carrie who is a 19-year-old living in New York, and she's already graduated from high school and college because she was very gifted. She lost her mother at a really young age, and her dad was like, you know what, you're gonna skip 2 grades, and she went to college when she was 16. And so she graduated when she was 19, and she's very socially awkward. She's a therapist, and he's trying to push her to like go out more, meet new people. In fact, there was this one scene, he's like, how many books did you read this week? And she's like 17. He's like, is that normal to you? And I'm like, who cares? Like 17 books, that's freaking great. You do you. I didn't like that. If you want to be an introvert, be an introvert. But you know, it was definitely a movie, a coming to age movie of her kind of blossoming. You also figured out some things that happened to her in her past that have kind of made her more socially reserved, and you understand why. But it was actually a really cute, heartwarming movie that I would give a 4 out of 5. I don't think anybody's talked about it. I really enjoyed it. It's not like an amazing movie, but I just really enjoyed Carrie's character and watching her progress. In the end was just so adorable. So I highly recommend it. It was just totally a random watch for me on Netflix, and I was like, this looks interesting, and I really enjoyed it, honestly. So there you have my thoughts and feelings of all the things I've watched recently. I'm thinking about next month doing a video of ranking all of like the Netflix holiday movies, not all of them because holy crap, but just a few of them because I would love to know if you guys want that. I watched a couple, and some are cringy, some are kind of decent, most are cringy, so I'd love to know if you want a video of me talking all about like the Netflix holiday movies, which ones are worth your time, which ones you can totally just peace out on. Let me know if you want that. I would love to know if you've watched any of the things I've talked about today, if you have the same feelings or not, things like that. If you have any, seeing what I've watched today also, if you have any sort of suggestions of what I should watch next, please leave them down below because right now I'm like looking for anything to watch. I'm just in a watching mood, and I'm embracing that because I'm not usually like that. So let me know what to watch down below. And also, speaking of watching, thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.